Hello my dear students, welcome to JK Studio. Today we are going to start a very important concept which is used or which we have to study in our class 10th. Not in class 10th, but this concept is also used in our plus 2 or in our real life, because without this concept our computer systems cannot work, we cannot store the data. And so let us see what is that very important concept we are going to study here. The important concept is database development, means databases. What is database? How to create a database? What is table? How to create a table? How to manipulate a data? How to store a data in a database? And a lot of things are there which we have to understand here in this concept. But before I jump into the practical part of this, we have to understand the theoretical concept of databases. So what is database? What is the importance of this? Let us study it in some different way. So let us start with something very, very important, that what is actually a database. So what is a database actually? So database is a technical definition of a database is that database is a collection of related data. So whenever you want to store a data, that has to be stored in a database. Now what is mean by data here, right? So let us understand what is data actually here, and then we can start with all these concepts here. Now let us suppose I have written only 20. Now this 20 is a data here. It is a data. But when I write 20, and then if I write here date of birth, that means it becomes an information. We'll take a basic example of this, that where actually it is used. I know that everybody has a phone. You all have phone with you. A phone is a very important part of our life. Now in the phone, we always play with this particular thing called contacts. So we always use a phone book or a contacts to save the numbers of our dear ones. Now what are the information we save? We save mobile number. We save the name of that person. We also can save the email ID, and if possible we can also save other informations like the date of birth, and the address. So these are the basic information. This is a basic information which we save in our contacts, in our phone book, right, for our dear ones. Or maybe if I'm going to an office, so I'm storing the data of my boss, my colleagues, right, in my contacts. So what actually I do in my phone book, I can add new number, right? I can delete the old data, means old number I can delete, right? Now what can be the situation where I can delete my old number? The person is no more in touch with me, or the number has been changed, so I'll delete the old contact and I can save the new one. Or I can also update the contact. So these are the three basic operations which you can perform on your contacts, right? These are the similar types of operations which we perform in a database. So whenever we create a database, we perform these three basic operations. We can add new data, we can delete the old data, and we can also update the data. And last thing which we have to do is we can always see the data, or we can display the data. right? So if I have to give a call to someone, I'll open my contacts, I'll search the number, and I can call that person. So that is what that I am able to see the data in my phone book. So this is a basic example of a very small database which is there in your phone and which we are operating on day-to-day basis. Now, so we have discussed that database is a collection of related data. Now this data we have to store in some software, right? We have to store this data in some software, and that software is known as database management system. So that software is also known as a database management system. So what are the examples of our database management system? We have MySQL, which is free of cost. We can download it free of cost on our machines and work on it. Second one is we can have Microsoft SQL Server. A student version is definitely free for Microsoft SQL Server, but the professional edition is a paid version. That means we need a license for that. Microsoft Access, again a database management system, Oracle, and IBM DB2. Now these are the major database management systems which we can use in our daily life, right? But majority of us are using MySQL because it is free of cost and it is easy to install and we can work in this. Now this, I said that this we need a software that is called DBMS, database management system. That is DBMS, database management system. So when we need database management system, where we have to install it? That means we need a machine, and that machine is known as database server, right? A machine on which we have to install our database bases or DBMS, that is known as database server. Now in that machine we can have one or more databases, means a minimum of one, and maximum is it depends on the capacity of that machine. So we can have minimum one database and maximum it is up to the limit of that machine, right? Now what is there in the database now? In a database we store tables, right? In a database we store tables. So minimum of one table and maximum it can be any number of tables, right? Again, there is no limit to store the tables in our database. Now what is table now? So see, it is a hierarchy. It is a hierarchy. First we have understood what is database, then we have understood where we have to install our database, what is the name of that software we call it, right? And then we understood what is database, and then we understood tables. कि table होते हैं database में, we store tables in a database. So what is table actually? So tables are used to store data in the form of rows and columns. In the form of rows and columns. So we'll understand that what is actually rows and what is columns, right? Now here in the table we can modify our rows and columns. That means columns can be modified and rows also can be modified. So let us understand with a very good example here, right? Because right now we are I'm talking to you students. So let us take an example of yours only. Now see, if I have to store an information about students, if I have to store information about the students, right? Your teacher does it in your classroom, right? Sometimes the teacher comes in a class and tell you people to write down your name, your phone number, your email ID, your father's name, your mother's name, or maybe this data you have filled in your admission form. So whenever you have taken an admission into a school, you have filled this data there. Now where is actually that data going? That data is actually stored in tables, and those tables are stored in database. So which is permanent. At any point of time you can get that data back and we can see the data. We can see your result, your everything. So what is the first thing you need? That student must have an admission number. So that is first data which we want. Student will have a name. student will have a class, student will have a roll number, student will have a address, date of birth, fees, last class in which the student has studied, the result of that last class, and the percentage he scored in the last class. Now if I do it like this, I think you all must be knowing MS Word or MS Excel, right? Let's take an example of Microsoft Excel here, right? Now this Microsoft Excel, I'll pick up Microsoft Excel here, and here let's suppose I store admission number, then name, class, roll number, address, date of birth, fee, last class, result, and percentage. Now here in Excel, when I store my data, now these are my columns, so all these are my columns, and I'll write, let's suppose 1001 or 1002, I write Jitendra, I write class as 12th, I write roll number as 1, I'll address as Amritsar, date of birth, let's suppose 2006 2012, fees, let's suppose around 10,000, last class which I have studied is 11th, the percentage which I have scored is 80%. So as you can know that this is the data which I have stored here. So this admission number, name, class, roll number, address, date of birth, fees, last class, and percentage is known as my columns. These are my columns. And this 1002, Jitendra, and all this is known as my rows. So if I store one more student data here, that means how many students data I am having? 2. So there are 2 rows. If I store one more student, let's suppose there are 30 students in my class. So how many rows will have? 30 rows will have. And this is my columns again. I am repeating again. The names are known as the columns here. And this is known as the data here. Right? So that is how we have, why we have written here, student is my table name. Student is my table name. And all these are my column names. Let's take one more example to understand this. I think that you all must be aware of car, right? Now car has a brand, car also has a model, color, cost, manufacturing date, registration number, and number of seats in it. So all these things will be considered as your columns, and this will be considered as my table name. So again, this is very, very important to store this data, right? So these are the examples of table. Again, we can take an example of insurance company where we have registration number, insurance number, amount, start date, and end date, right? So this is very, very important to understand the concept of tables, columns, and rows first. So if you have understood this particular concept, then definitely we can move to the next part, that how to create your tables, databases, and all those stuffs. Now let us discuss one last very important thing, and after that we'll close this particular lecture, and that is, what are the different commands we need to work on our records, rows, or data. So there is one very interesting thing which is called SQL. that's called structured query language. SQL, the full form of SQL is structured query language, a language which is used to manipulate your data, a language which is used to feed data in our database, right? So what are the different commands we have to understand here? The first command is a select command. Now with the help of select command, we can print the data on the screen. We can print the data on the screen. The second command is called insert command. The insert command is used to add a new record. So if you want to add a new record, you have to use the insert command. What is this DML? We'll study this in our next lecture. Next command is the update command. Now update command is used to modify the existing data. So if you want to modify an existing data, you have to use the update command. Now if you want to delete the old data, right, like I give you an example of phone book, that you want to delete an old contact, right? So command which is running at the back end is known as a delete command. So these are the basic commands we have to understand. And now in our next lecture, we are going to study that how to work or how to create a database, how to create a table using different softwares, right? So that will be our next lecture. So thank you very much for this particular lecture. Now if you have any problems, you can write in the comment box. Feel free to write all your comments, and if you have any problems in a database, let me know. I'll solve those problems. Thank you very much.